we must recognize that without behaving ethically, we will not communicate the right message to the generation that is coming behind. Taxation is a multidisciplinary profession, and nobody is coming cold. Everybody already belongs to one profession. So we are familiar with the rules. The uniqueness of the application in the context of taxation, we need to highlight them, and then we need to make sure that we enforce them strictly. Unless we behave ethically, people who are coming behind will not look at us and say, I want to be like them. There are people studying taxation in our various universities. They must recognize the distinction between taxation and being an accountant. It's not enough. A tax practitioner knows accounting and something more. It's not enough to be a lawyer. A tax practitioner knows law and something more. It's not enough to be an economist. A tax practitioner knows economics and something more.
Last episode, we continued sharing with you the intellectual feast that the 27th Annual Tax Conference of the CITN turned out to be. On day 2, the discourse shifted to the skills, qualities, and expectations of a tax practitioner, with the delivery of a paper on Tax Practice in Nigeria, Balancing Professionalism and Ethics. To lead the discussion was Mr. Yomi Olubenro of Deloitte, who is one of the leading lights of the tax profession in Nigeria. Mr. Olubenro's paper was well received and was followed by a robust discussion by an esteemed panel of discussants. Here is what transpired.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olubenro, for very insightful presentation. I will now go straight to my panelists. You have 5 minutes each to make your intervention. And I'm not going to be asking any question. You will listen to the presentation, which you've had the benefit of reviewing. There should be some aspects of the presentation that strike you. Can you react accordingly? And I would like to first invite Mrs. Titilola Akilawo to please react to the presentation.
The first intervention came from Mrs. Titilola Akinlawo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Legal Advisor to the CITN.
Talking about ethics in any profession, are we ready for fairness? Are we ready for transparency? Are we ready for integrity? More importantly, in our society today, we've been talking about corruption. We know it's from the top right to the bottom. So how do we, as tax professionals, whether administrator, whether consultant, whether as revenue collector, in whichever capacity we act as a tax professional, are we really ready, willing, and able to be ethical? Now, I would want to take the issue of how can we improve ethical professionalism. Is there a way where we can, for tax administrators, that we have incentives for them to become more ethical? Instead of asking that, oh, the taxpayer should pay 1% to the government and they take 99%. Is it possible for us to come up with incentives to improve the welfare of tax administrators, to kind of come up with incentives like, okay, if you meet this target, you get a particular percentage? I think that, more than anything else, would encourage more ethical behavior of tax administrators. And for tax consultants, If the association, like CITN for instance, like in a gathering like this, decides to honor people that are ethical in the profession, I'm sure we would be able to get many more of us to become more ethical in doing the services or rendering our services. Then, but more importantly, is the enforcement of our code of ethics. Every profession has its code of ethics. How have we been able to enforce this? How have we been able to bring erring professionals to book? Have we been able, like in the CITN Code of Ethics, we have the investigative panel, we have the disciplinary panel. How have we been able to enforce or even get members that erred to be investigated, not to talk of being disciplined? Until and unless we get to that point of enforcement, to make other people to know that it's not in their best interest to be unethical, we must be able, among ourselves, to come up with a decent mode of punishment for unethical members. And I believe that the whistleblowing system, too, can come in here. When tax administrators are ready to collude with tax consultants and with taxpayer, not to pay the correct amount of taxes, then somebody should be able to bring it to the fore so that we get to the level of enforcement of code of ethics. If we don't do that, I look at it, I cannot recall, even as a legal advisor of CITN, that I've ever been invited to give any opinion on any investigation relating to unethical conduct. So the association, this body must come up to task and make up their minds that henceforth we are going to become very, very harsh on any member of this association that has been found to be unethical.
Next was Professor Abiola Sani, Professor of Law, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and former legal advisor to the CITN.
I'm not surprised by the quality of the presentation. No doubt, Yomi is a thoroughbred professional. I've worked with him on many fronts, and I liked the boldness. He said, I've come this far, that it is unthinkable, it is unimaginable that I commit myself to professionalism, especially ethical professionalism, is not a destination, but a journey, a life of lifelong integrity. There are classes of professionals, and this discourse is coming at a time when the current reform recognizes that there is a decadence in the system that must be addressed. And we are approaching it in a very unique, proactive manner by saying, let us vest some power in tax authorities at all levels to regulate tax agents. Is this the right approach? Yomi had voted for it, but I beg to disagree. You know, tax authorities have their hands full. What I would recommend here is collaboration. Now, a confession from the legal advisor of the CITN, we are not doing enough. Let's look at what the medical profession is doing. Let's look what the legal profession is doing. Let us popularize the code of conduct and let us communicate the standard in a simple, efficient manner. Let us begin to use scenarios, the type of scenario that Yomi painted in his excellent paper, in teaching code of conduct. I'm not even aware, many people are familiar with the code of conduct. As a matter of fact, no reference was even made to any specific one. Any lawyer here will remember in the law school, when you say rule, so, you know what it is about. We have learned certain things to become dormant. We need to pick it from there. Professionalism requires minimum skill. God forbid that everybody will attain a standard where you know everything. Even in law, we say that God forbid that every lawyer should know all the law. But there is a minimum standard that every lawyer should know. Otherwise, it becomes an embarrassment. I want to communicate this fairly, that we need to pay attention to skill acquisition in the post-reform era. A lot of the provisions that we have been familiar with, we have been accustomed to, that we have even crammed will change. They will no longer be in the law. So I believe our MTPC should be continually reformed in order to make sure that people continuously update. Then in terms of ethical standard, unless we fish out those who are erring intentionally, those who are like the little foxes or the bad eggs spoiling the whole bunch, and we must continually deal with them. We must identify them and then deal with them. Then finally, we must recognize that without behaving ethically, we will not communicate the right message to the generation that is coming behind. Taxation is a multidisciplinary profession, and nobody is coming cold. Everybody already belongs to one profession. So we are familiar with the rules. The uniqueness of the application in the context of taxation, we need to highlight them, and then we need to make sure that we enforce them strictly. Unless we behave ethically, people who are coming behind will not look at us and say, I want to be like them. When I received my admission letter to study law, and I saw that I've been admitted to study law at Obafemi Awolowo University, even without being overtly spiritual, I went down on my knees. I said, God, finally, of a truth, I'm going to become somebody of significance and importance in the society. That is the message, the image, as tax ambassadors, that we need to communicate to those who are coming behind. There are people studying taxation in our various universities. They must recognize the distinction between taxation and being an accountant. It's not enough. A tax practitioner knows accounting and something more. It's not enough to be a lawyer. A tax practitioner knows law and something more. It's not enough to be an economist. A tax practitioner knows economics and something more. And we must be cognizant of emerging areas that relate even to our profession. And I will highlight data privacy. Your clients are data subjects. You are data controller. There are obligations you owe to them. Do not feed information about your client into the computer, because you'll be compromising their privacy.
From Professor Abiola Sani, the baton was passed to Professor Cairo Mainoma, former Vice Chancellor of the Nasarawa State University and member of the Council of the CITN.
I will attempt to develop about 5 frameworks within the 5 minutes, actually. The first is to say that, is there anything to balance between professionalism and ethics? I say yes, there is something to balance. If you are talking about professionalism without ethics becomes mechanical. And ethics without professionalism may lack effectiveness. But what is actually the issue? The first is about integrity over impression. It is about not unethical shortcuts. It is about navigating client pressure. It's about objectivity in practice. It's about compliance with laws and codes. It's about ethical branding, no compromise on values, and it's about transparency in dealings. So that is about innocent. The difference between ethics and professionalism about innocent. Then what is the position of AMY that has submitted to us? The issue is about objectivity. The issue is about legal compliance. It's about upholding integrity. It's about guiding clients responsibly. It's about boundaries in engagement. It's about ethics first. It's about never misinterpret facts. It's about record and report. It's about recording and reporting diligently. It's about ongoing professional development. So all that the presenter has done is to tell us about Olugbenro, objectivity to the last one, the last O being ongoing professional development. What is it that the Institute can do in this area of balancing ethics and professionalism? And I say simply, it's about setting ethical standards, it's about advocating for integrity, it's about monitoring compliance, it's about upholding disciplinary measures, it's about educating people continuously, and it's about leading by example. Again, that framework will give you Samuel. So, and what is it that the practitioners can do in this area that we're talking about balancing ethics and professionalism? It's about promoting, I say practitioners should just practice. Promoting integrity, remain informed, avoid conflict, communicating boundaries, track and document advice, insist on legal compliance, consult when in doubt, and exit on ethical engagement. And finally, what can administrators do? And I say they should just take steps. And that is to say, strict adherence to code, transparency, ethics training, public awareness, strengthening oversight. Thank you very much.
Acronyms to the rescue. And last but not the least, Mr. Yemi Adediran of Anderson.
A lot has been said about professionalism and ethics and the need for us to, build a more ethical environment. And I think one of the points that resonated with me when Yomi was speaking was the word trust and the environment that we operate in. I think we can do more in building collective trust between the tax authorities and the taxpayer. There was a study in 2022 that said that about 42% of taxpayers underreport their income. So you have taxpayers underreporting their income for tax purposes. So when the taxman goes out there for audit, he has at the back of the mind that, hey, there's something not accurate about this taxpayer's records, even if the records are accurate. Now, if you ask the taxpayer that, why are you underreporting your income? The answer you probably get is that, I need to prepare my tax returns in such a way that when the taxman comes for audit, he has something to take home. And the tax man comes to review the books and says, no, I can't go back to my office without having a tax liability, regardless of how perfect your records are. So I think we need to have a reorientation and build a better environment that instills trust, such that a taxpayer, even when he computes his tax records and submits to the tax authority, I'm looking forward to that day where the tax authority will review those records, maybe a DEX review, and go back to the taxpayer that I think you overpaid taxes. We are not there yet in instilling trust. What we most likely would get from the tax authorities that even though you filed your returns, you still have additional taxes to pay. And in other climes where trust has been instilled, you find out that there are times that the tax authority said, I've reviewed your records, and I think you've even overpaid taxes. We had a wonderful opportunity during the VADES period to instill trust in the system, but I think we blew it. I mean, the VADES system, what we told taxpayers was that, okay, you're going to have an amnesty, you're not going to pay taxes. And there were people that were skeptical. The outcome of that was that taxpayers who even applied for VADES were slated for audit. I think we have a new opportunity. We're in an era where we are passing new laws. We need to make sure that our laws encourage the right behavior. We need to be hard on on taxpayers that are not compliant. We need to make sure that they are punished for non-compliance. But at the same time, for those who are compliant, for those who do the right thing, we need to equally celebrate them. That's one of the ways that we can build an environment where the taxpayer and the tax authorities are operating with the right level of trust for one another. And I think that's the bedrock for professionalism and ethical practices. So I think I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adediro. We will take some feedbacks from the floor, and then thereafter, my panelists will respond and we'll round up. Thank you.
This issue of professionalism and ethics is a very worrisome issue. I believe we have reached the point whereby our legal colleague did mention the need to be proactive and creative. And I'm asking the question, especially from academics like Professor Noma, is it a possibility to introduce as part of the qualification an exam on ethics and professionalism? That's my question.
I think Yemi was actually reading my point that I want to raise. And the point is on professional ethics and compliance. If you do your tax filing and you pay 100% of what you are supposed to pay, and there is a tax audit, we know that the tax man is not likely going to close that tax audit. Is that true or false? The audit is not going to be closed unless you make an additional payment. And that additional payment, I think I have written some tax authorities as a peace tax, because that's not the tax demanded by the law. So professionalism is doing the right thing. I mean, ethical is doing the right thing rightly. That is ethics. You have two options. It's either, which some people do, and I don't subscribe to that, it's not to pay the full amount. You keep some amount for the taxpayers, because the day will definitely come when you must pay that balance. The other option is for you to pay the full amount, and when the tax man comes, you as the tax professional then have to advise your clients to pay extra amounts. That will also be unprofessional. And that is why I'm saying that professionalism is on trial. Now, if you refuse to pay and you raise a notice of objection, the tax authorities in the recent days before, you will go through the notice of appeal, Federal High Court, until the matter is decided. The payment is going to be in abeyance. But there is no choice of any tax being abeyance now. What comes is a criminal charge for non-payment of tax assessed. How do professionals handle that? And I think if both Yemi and Yomi can address that, as well as Professor Sonny Abiola. If you can address that, because it's a current challenge that is facing the practice. Thank you very much.
Ethics and practices of taxation, it does not rely only in theory, because people who claim that they are good in keeping books of accounting and paying their taxes as when due. I used to tell people that even when you wash a tube of yam in an ocean and bring it out for sun to dry it, you must still see some particles of sand in it. Therefore, taxation is a different scenario from accounting. So anybody who is claiming that he has paid in full, I think that person is trying to make a mistake. However, my question is this. The ethics we are talking about, how do we manage these ethics to the baseline of taxpayers? Many taxpayers have no knowledge of taxation. All they know is to carry business up and down. How do we trigger this knowledge of educating the taxpayers to the grassroots so that ethics will flow for the grassroots to the professionals and the administrators?
I'm happy about this particular topic, only that I'm still not comfortable because we are only mouthing the topic. We all know that sin is believing, rather than do what I say, rather than do what I do. I'm not sure whether when 99.9% of all of us here in this hall are confronted with the challenge raised by this topic, balancing professionalism and ethics, whether we will not fail the test. But that is the issue. What is the solution? We need to start from our individual quarters. We observe that those people who are hell-bent in balancing this, they are all victims as of today. And they are currently playing victim in all their different endeavors. But as professionals, let us start from somewhere, rather than mouthing this thing. Yes, even somebody, for example, who has just gotten bribe, you ask him to come and speak on this. He will speak like a chief imam, he will speak like a pastor. Yet, whenever he finishes the topic here, it goes back to the same thing. Please, I want to appeal to members. Let us start from our individual quotas. As members of CITN, let people see what we are professing and let them see that we are balancing these two, rather than just mouthing this issue of balancing professionalism and ethics. Let us do our own part, and Nigeria will be greater than this. Thank you.
Let me invite my panelists, Professor Sonny, just one, and I hope others will take.
All right. I will do 1.5.
All right.
Very briefly. Now, Alhaji Alatoye, I'm happy you have already said it's unprofessional to pay instrumentally rather than paying in full. I mean, knowing 100 is what you should pay, and you say, let me pay 90. When they come back, that is unprofessional. Professionalism is to do it right and then insist on the right thing. As lawyers say, if you need to go to court, so be it. And I'm happy you are also a lawyer. If you don't take some matters to court, lawyers in our midst will not have enough. Then we must bear in mind that it is in our interest to be ethically professional. If you are not, there are instructions you will never get. And also, it takes professionalism for you to retain certain clients. Your clients are watching you. If you behave in certain way, they will recognize you as a virus and they will move on. So it's important for us as a professional body to also recognize that the tax administrators are part of us. As a matter of fact, CITM was established as a platform to facilitate interaction between administrators and professionals. And we should avoid what lawyers call fallacy of overgeneralization. Not all tax administrators are corrupt. No. I work with them on a regular basis and I can attest to the integrity of many, not few. But we must deal with the problem of perception. Why this may not solve the whole problem, I think we should do something about their take-home. We should have a special salary for them in recognition of their important role as gatekeepers to minimize pressure and temptation. So it is not correct to say all of them take bribe. I don't want to start mentioning names. There are some, if you take bribe to them, they will faint or collapse. So it is not true. But we should try and address whatever makes it look as if all lawyers are liars, all tax administrators are corrupt. It is not true. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Akilaro, please, can you speak to the issue of consequences of unethical practices in tax planning and the issue relative to client interaction, and how do these practices impact public trust and national development?
Well, the contention about public trust, when you want a taxpayer to pay and cannot say what the money is being used for, certainly there can be no trust. When, like the earlier paper by Mr. Adeikwaye, when you have to be your own local government, you have to provide your borehole, you have to pay for your medicals, pay for your children's school fees, pave the road to your house, just provide your own security. When the contention would be, can we truly and really have public trust? It's not going to happen. But viewing that with professionalism, I would think we're all aware that there's a great moral decadence in all facets of our life in Nigeria today. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is, like the past president said, we must start from our own little corner. There must be a moral rebirth. We all must come to an agreement, not only tax professionals, but all of us must come to an agreement that henceforth we are going to do things in the right way. Look at it, not only in professions, even from our children. Look at JAMB, look at WAEC, look at special centers. Who are the people propagating this? We, the parents. And we want things to be better. We want things to be done professionally. Of course, we are joking. So truly and really, we start from the basics. The moral values that I was nurtured with, that I can stand and profess ethics, has gone to the doors. How come we were not able to pass it on to the next generation? Where are we today in our moral values? We all are complicit. So it is good that we take a back seat, think about what the future of this country will be with the way and manner we all anchor over money. Because it is the love of money that has brought us to where we are today. If we can respect people without money but are ethical, nobody will be rushing after money. And then we will come back to that old values by which we are known. So I would believe that is the basic idea behind all of this. Thank you.
Yeah, there is a question on whether it is necessary to have ethics education or for tax practitioners. I would say that it is very important that for any profession to call itself a profession, people must be educated on ethical conduct of that profession. Without that conduct, without that ethical conduct, there is no profession. So there is the need to actually have that, and it is easy to establish because of high risk of ethical dilemmas, because of issue of public interest, because of what reinforces professional credibility, because of the issue of preventing legal and disciplinary consequences. There is a need to, so, and that course on ethics should be around principles of professional ethics, real life case studies in tax practice, Nigerian legal and regulatory framework, including the CITN code, ethical tax planning versus evasion, dealing with corruption and client pressure, whistleblowing protection and reporting channels, and role of professional judgment and documentation. Such things can be developed in the course outline for purposes of learning ethics within the profession. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the conversation we are having here boils down to two things when we talk about ethics. Are we going to approach it from the individual practitioners, telling them to uphold higher ethical standards? As important as that is, I think building systems that encourage or enforce ethical practices is more compelling. We may not be able to control or force people to be ethical. No matter how much you preach it, there will still be some bad eggs. But I think if we develop a system that is hard on ethical practices and also promotes and celebrates ethical practices, then we would be moving closer to the mark. And if you look at the taxpayer and the tax authority, I think the taxpayer authority has more powers on their side, and they can drive those ethical behaviors more than the taxpayer. And I think it begins from how we implement the tax laws. I mean, if I take an example, currently, if you do not pay your taxes and you are defaulting your taxes, the taxman can either go through the tax processes, send you a letter, you object, and then you end up in court. Or the taxman comes to your premises and pastes a sticker on your premises. That achieves a faster result and supports the name and shame, but I don't think there's any provision in the law that supports that. So if you want to drive certain practices, we need to codify them in the law. We need to celebrate people who are upholding the right standards, and we need to punish people who are not doing so. That way, we create a system where people know that even if I want to do bad, I want to be unethical, the system is going to punish me. It also creates a system where if I do good, if I file and overpay taxes, the taxman is going to call me back and say, see, you overpaid this, take this. That way we build that system of trust in which professionalism and ethical standards will rest. I think that's my final thought on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. The man who set the stage, Mr. Olubenro, back his closing, thoughts.
Thank you so much. And I think both the question, contributions, and the panelists' input have, really enriched this engagement. So in wrapping up, I will just kind of connect with the comments made by Alhaji Alatoye. I think the person behind, raised similar thing when he used the analogy of if you wash a tuber of yam in the ocean and sun dry it, dust will still gather. So which was in a way to reiterate the point that when an audit is done, there's probably still going to be a liability. And I think our past president, Mr. Fashoto, just kind of summed it up to say, look, we need to do the talk, we need to do what we are saying rather than practice. I think my charge or comment with respect to all of this, leaving some exposure so that tax authority will find something when we do an audit, we really need to, put our foot down and do the right thing. And maybe from the revenue authorities, they must recognize that there are taxpayers who are genuinely interested in discharging their obligations. And it is not abnormal to do a tax audit and not find an exposure. And we need to get to a point where we are celebrating that level of excellence as a way of encouraging that level of practice rather than penalizing good behavior. Because if we go to taxpayers that have done their utmost best and there is still this feeling that there's something else that we want to extract, we inadvertently create in them the culture of keep something behind till when they come, and it's not good. And we must ensure that, in Lagos State, and I think FRS also have done it a number of times, we need to celebrate good taxpayer. Maybe we need to move it away from just celebrating large taxpayer or just quantum to, focusing a lot more on those who have been compliant. If we have done a tax audit twice, for example, and there is no additional liability, that must count for something in terms of maybe you being, excluded from a tax audit for a particular time or a different kind of way to encourage them. In Ghana, for example, you can write for a waiver of withholding tax deduction, for example, if you have been able to demonstrate a certain level of compliance, because the revenue authority will say withholding tax is a way of, advance payment of tax, making sure that the tax authority get hold of the cash early, they know you exist, and so you can't hide because you provided an advance payment of tax. But for taxpayers who can demonstrate that they have upheld certain level of compliance and that they will still discharge their obligation, they can get waiver from withholding taxes, for example. That is a way to make taxpayers feel encouraged and aspire to a point where they can also, have that level of status. And I think the other point I will make with respect to liability still being determined after an audit is that we shouldn't paint every instance of additional assessment from a tax audit. We shouldn't overgeneralize, using Prof's word, to meaning unethical practice have been done. There are instances where you do have what we call uncertain tax positions. There are instances where there are ambiguity in the law. And in a system where the taxpayer know that if I pay in advance when I am not certain, when the technical debate is held and I subsequently win, I will go through hell in getting refund. Most taxpayers will say, do the right thing for all of the cases that is clear. There are specific instances of UTPs on certain tax position, and I choose to hold on to that until we are able to have the technical debate with the revenue authority. If they hold on to their side, I will go to court and defend my position. If I subsequently lose, I will pay. Those cases do exist. And it's not in all the cases that it's just because somebody has suppressed income, falsified, documents, or reduced revenue, which is the bulk of what we are discussing. Let's move it from a situation where within the law we'll do the right thing.
then we can take it to a point of morality. Then we can have conversation around responsible taxation. I think there's still quite a lot that touches on ethical conduct, and that's the one, you know, we're talking about. So if a taxpayer decides to say there's ambiguity here, and if there is ambiguity in the law, even based on practices and established precedences, it should be, you know, rule in favor of the client. So the guy say, I'm not likely going to just give to government something that I don't have 100%, you know, assurance. I will hold on to it, and then the revenue authorities come, they will debate. If I think the cost of litigation is too much, I can give in. If not, I would rather take it to court. If those are the cases we're having, that will be the kind of practices that can expand the frontier of the practice. The one we're talking about is making sure that basic, you know, issues such as ensuring that we do the right thing, we are transparent, we are honest, and with the law coming, even these cases of UTPs, you can actually now have private rulings in advance to be able to, you know, evaluate where you are going to stand as far as that position is concerned. Those ones will still be there, and I am for taxpayer, you know, trying to stretch the law and understand and not necessarily just giving up. But let's clear up the ones that are basic and ensure that we are not doing anything that is unethical or unprofessional. Thank you so much. I'll pause there. Thank you, Mr. Oluwero. Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the audience. I think we are drawing the curtain on this very topical, you know, presentation, and which goes to the heart of our profession. And I want to recall that a number of people, you know, separating audit from tax. They say they prefer rather to do tax than audit. There are restrictions on the audit fee you can charge for an audit engagement. But for tax practice, you don't have any scale or rates applicable. But at the heart of everything, you know, unethical conduct, wrong computations, issues of trying to interpret something that is of revenue nature as being of a capital nature in order to evade tax, when there are no, the boundaries are very clear and distinct, are things that are objectionable in our tax practice. On that note, my dear colleagues, I want to thank our lead presenter, Mr. Oluwero, my panelists, Professor Abiola Sonny, Mrs. Akilawo, Professor Mainoma, and Mr. Adediro for their insightful interventions. Thank you very much.